Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. I'm your host, Devan Harris. And I'm here to tell you all about the latest Bachelor news, Golden Globes drama, and everything about social media and entertainment. The shocking, unexpected death of two very profound Hollywood stars, Silvio Horta, who wrote and directed Ugly Betty, and Elizabeth Wurtzel, who wrote Prozac Nation. So we'll get into both of those. We'll get into some Bachelor buzz, and we'll end off with some fun facts. Who was born today? January 7th in Hollywood. A couple of famous folks were born today, and I will tell you who they were. So sit back, relax, get a snack, get a Snuggie, and we're just going to dive right in. So, The Bachelor premiered last night, and I was in and out throughout the whole thing because I cannot sit there for 10 hours in good faith knowing that I have other things to do and just watch The Bachelor. But I stayed for probably 2 hours, and I was simultaneously disappointed and not disappointed. It delivered what it was supposed to deliver. The drama, the tears, the laughs, the crazy first impressions. So I'm here to highlight a little bit of that for anybody who missed it. So The Bachelor pilot Pete is here to find his co-pilot. We left off with Pete being the third runner-up from Hannah Brown's season, Miss Alabama Hannah, and America pretty much fell in love with Peter. I'm not gonna say I like Peter, and I'm mad because I didn't like Peter because I thought he was a player. And I still think he is a player. I mean, he moved in with a girl. He asked a girl to move in with him a month before he went on the show. And if that doesn't scream, I'm only in this for the clout, then what does, you know? So I went into this thinking, oh, I'm not going to like this guy. But sure enough, I've watched the season, and I don't know. He's cute. He's cute, okay? He's not crazy cute. He's average, you know, but there's something about him, and so he comes from Spanish heritage. That might be, you know, a couple points. We like exotic boys. He's a pilot. He's sweet, you know, he's got that kind of boyish charm, but also, you know, he could turn the heat up a little bit. I'm not going to keep going with this. But by the end of the show, he kind of had me wrapped around his finger, and that pissed me off more than anything. But, you know, it makes for good TV. At least The Bachelor has to be a likable person. So we jump right into everybody's favorite part, my favorite part. If there is an episode that I will watch religiously every year, it is the first impressions. So stepping out of the limo, the girls or guys, depending on which season it is, pull out all of the stops. They bring their props, and they bring their handwritten notes, and it's goofy, it's cringy, it's crazy, and we die laughing every year at what these people come up with. So everybody wants to stand out whenever they get out of the limo. So you will have everything from really crass jokes to people driving in on vintage cars, or somebody even came out in a suitcase this time around. It's really quite a spectacle. Some standout first impressions were Windmill Girl. I didn't bother to learn their names. There were about 30 of them. So she came in with a windmill strapped on her back, and she said, something about 4 times, because Peter and Hannah had sex in a windmill 4 times, which, maybe that, having that in your head, maybe that makes Peter a little bit of a bad boy. Maybe that makes him more attractive. I don't know. I don't want to give myself away on a podcast, but that was a running joke through the whole entire thing, and it's like, let it go. People just grasp onto anything sexual. So the windmill joke was, there were 4 or 5 girls in a montage that just things about the windmill. It's old, it's dead. There was the cat girl. For those of you who watched the show, she said some pretty interesting things about how he's going to fall in love with her hairless cat, but she didn't say it exactly like that, and that one caught me by surprise. I'm surprised they even let that air. It's a train wreck, and I just absolutely love it. The I'm Okay girl, so there was a hippie girl. She was practicing, she was a waxer, and her lead-in intro, she had one of the 30 to 60 second segments that showed a little bit about her, and her intro was, I'm a service worker. I like to serve others, and I like to care for others. And she was like, I also like to care for their vaginas. And she ripped the wax off of some woman, and it turns out she's a bikini waxer. And just, they're reaching this year. I mean, it's funny, they got the laughs out of me, but what cracked me up, because I love crackhead humor, is all these girls are getting out of the limo, like, freaking out, energy to the high heavens, and this girl, I don't remember her name for the life of me, she gets out, and she's walking up to Peter, and his energy's out of 10, he's like, hey, how are you? And she goes, I'm okay, and just keeps walking, and I thought, girl, I identify with that, and that was something that made us laugh. I watch it with my family. It's a kind of a tradition. And then finally, standout first impressions, which is not really a first impression. Hannah came back. And I'll get into that a little bit later, probably a minute or so. But surprisingly, Hannah Sluss, which is a top competitor this season, I'm not going to give too much away, but I happen to know who makes it to the end. I always check Reality Steve's site religiously, because I just can't handle any surprises. Hannah Sluss did not have a memorable entrance. Surprisingly enough, she's America's sweetheart, one of the top runners. She will be throughout the season. Hannah Sluss, that's her name. She's a model, and she's modeled in huge campaigns. She's a cutie. She's precious, but she doesn't have a very good first impression, so that was kind of weird. But yeah, so we go right into the first elimination in the rose ceremony, and Hannah Brown coming back, and she totally fakes us out. But what else could you expect from ABC? I mean, they are dialing it in. They're phoning it in this year. Just terrible. The editing is dramatic, more dramatic than usual. It's cringy, but you just can't look away from it. But Hannah came back, and I don't know if she's coming back later, but basically she came back, and the commercials made it look like she was coming back on the show, but she really just came back to give Peter the pilot wings. Peter's the pilot, so he gave Hannah the first night like a pin that had wings, since he's a pilot, and so she came back to give him back, and she just pieced out after that, and it's like, okay, really? They just did that for the views. But I mean, they got us, and there are a couple scenes where Hannah's crying and saying, do you still have feelings for me? And her old Alabama Hannah's mascara is running down her cheeks. So, drama. She's coming back, apparently. She keeps coming back. So yeah, we go straight into the first elimination and rose ceremony, and then the first date, which is flight school. And so since Peter's a pilot, he puts the girls through flight school. So you have a little bit of classroom education, you get the math, and then they move on to the physical challenges. And at one point, they do a flight simulator, and they do I think it's called the gyrotechnic spin. Gyro something. It's a spinning thing that you train on if you're joining NASA. You strap in and you spin 360 degrees all different ways pretty quickly. And every year, every season, they have one girl who has an irrational fear of something, and they slow the editing down and they put really sad music behind it, and it's usually something really silly. I think they do it, I think it's a gag at this point, but this time it was, one of the girls had really bad motion sickness, and so they played it up, this is the hard-hitting story. She said, every time I have really bad motion sickness, and I don't want to throw up in front of Peter, and when I was a girl, I was on the teacups, and it goes into this black and white montage. It's goofy. The Bachelor knows its audience, because they know people tune in for the BS and the laughs and just how cringy and train wrecky everything is. And then they get you in the end. But in the beginning, they really laid on thick with the comedic humor, I think. And it's goofy. So that's the first, breakdown. And there's tears, there's drama. These girls are catty this season. I've watched the show since I was a wee tot. Great for my brain. And these girls are catty, but that means good TV. So I will definitely be tuning in. I didn't see the end. I doubt anybody was eliminated towards the end, because there was an elimination ceremony in the beginning. But that is the first episode in a little bit of a summary, and it's the most shocking, most dramatic season of The Bachelor yet. But they say that every time. So, on the next segment, we'll be talking everything Golden Globes, Ricky Gervais's speech, and how it's shook everybody, including me, in the best way. So stay right here with the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Pete and the new Bachelor premiere last night, 3 hours long. Can you believe it? Like, write home about it already. No, I stayed and I watched it, actually. But that probably won't happen again, because we're past limos. Everybody knows that limos are the best part. So, moving on. Ricky Gervais is a legend, an icon, some might say a god. His Golden Globe speech is trending number one on everything, and for good reason. I mean, he's known for being crass and making really, really out there jokes that would offend the most elite liberal, which, bingo, that's what happened. Stars were in shock during the Golden Globes listening to his speech, and montages of celebrities' reactions as he was talking is, the videos are going around showing that. And just, I want to highlight the genius of Ricky Gervais. He's hosted a couple of times, and he always, he has a zing to his speeches, but this time he brought a beer. So things are about to get rocky when the host brings a beer to the stand to introduce the first nominee. So he brings a beer, and he goes in. He roasts everyone. It seems like he roasted everyone so hard this time around. So standouts for me, he goes right in with, they let me host this thing again because he's hosted it quite a few times now. At least they didn't fire me yet, like they fired Kevin Hart from the Oscars for tweeting inappropriate things. He talks about the foreign press and how they don't speak well enough English to understand anything he's saying. He talks about how the pedophile movies, Surviving R. Kelly and Escaping Neverland, the Michael Jackson biopic, how everything is like it's around pedophiles this year. And then he makes a nod to Ronan Farrow, and he says everybody's scared to work with him. And that's whenever things started to kind of turn. You kind of heard a little bit like, ooh. And that's when I was like, yo, like, what is this dude on? He's getting into it this year. I mean, I'm living for it, like that's the kind of, we're kind of in this culture where we like to be shocked, it's that kind of, I've said it before, it's my favorite kind of thing. It's that crackhead humor, that kind of irony that fuels the kinds of humor that people find funny these days, and he was just hitting it hard. He talked about the college scandal and Felicity Huffman, and that's when I was like, damn. He finished it off, and he said he made an Epstein joke, and the entire audience just silent. But the thing that stood out to me was Ricky Gervais is known to be crude. He's known to be crass. He's known to come up with these crazy speeches that shock people. But towards the end, he said something that was pretty profound through all of his crudeness. He said, life's too short to sit back and act like any of you, he was pointing to the audience, can judge anybody else. He said the elite people of Hollywood are in no place to judge anybody, to look down on anybody. Life's too short. They'll write about this tomorrow, so let's just live while we live, because we're going to die soon and there is not going to be a sequel. And I said, hallelujah, brother! And I was just living for his whole speech. So he slammed Martin Scorsese, too. He said he was making a joke about Disney World and how Martin Scorsese wouldn't be able to ride anything, and bless his heart, he's so precious. Whenever the camera panned in on his face, he was nodding. He said, yeah, it's true. And Robert De Niro sitting right beside him, just the coolest catch, casually. De Niro and Scorsese, like, just chilling. Awesome sight. I feel like they're like, I wish they were my uncles. I have Italian uncles, so, like, I feel like I'm halfway there, but that's the feel I get when I'm with my family. Like, I feel like I'm with De Niro and Scorsese and all those cats. So when we come back, we'll touch a little bit more on the Golden Globes, Awkwafina won a Golden Globe for The Farewell, and it was her first Golden Globe and the first Golden Globe to be won by a woman of Asian American heritage. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a couple of, random topics. Pretty Little Liars star wore half of her wedding dress on the red carpet, and I think that's brilliant. I think that's genius. Hard-hitting, like a legend. After that, we'll get into Silvio Horta, and I'll impart to you the top things that Ugly Betty taught us in life. Stay right here with the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Does anybody remember that time period? Like the Ugly Betty, Desperate Housewives time period? Just me? I remember it very clearly. Why was I watching these shows when I was young? That probably has contributed a lot to why I am the way I am. I was also an only child, so live it up. So last time we talked about the Golden Globes. We're going to get a little bit more into that later, but something happened this morning. Two headlines. When people die, it's kind of like, especially if their work had a profound impact on you, it's kind of like something that's kind of surreal, and not in a good way. I'm stumbling over my words. It shows you that, mortality is real. These larger-than-life actors, directors, producers that, wind up dead in the media, it's kind of heartbreaking. They say, don't meet your heroes and stuff, and I think it's even worse whenever you find out your hero is dead. I remember, I'm not saying Michael Jackson was my hero, but I was raised on his music, and I guess in a way he was one of my heroes. I was too young to know everything that was going on, with Neverland and Macaulay Culkin and, many of the young people that all of that mess, I was too young. Even though I was watching Desperate Housewives at the age of 8, I was too young to really understand that side of it. So all I knew was that I loved his music and I was raised on it, And so I remember when Michael Jackson died, it was kind of like, whoa, that was the first time, a celebrity's death really, I couldn't believe it. And we don't even know celebrities. It's just a very weird feeling. It's an intangible kind of like, wow. I didn't even know this person, but they had such an impact on my life. And so I remember watching this show. Silvio Horta, he directed and wrote and worked with the production team on Ugly Betty, the early 2000s show. He was found dead this morning in his Miami, Florida apartment. The cause is unknown, and he was 45 years old. 45. And he had a past with, he had a history with addiction, drug addiction. Of course, I don't want to say of course, but, you know, it's a dime a dozen in the industry. And so Ugly Betty creator, he was found dead this morning. He put America Ferrera on the map while she was in between recording and filming the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants movies, which is coming back. I think they've officially announced the final movie. And so he put her on the map. And Michael Urie, he put on the map, who recently, a couple years ago, starred in a one-man show on Broadway. And, funny enough, went to my school. Woo woo. It put those two on the map. So we lost a great creator, and I will always remember it was my mom's favorite show. And a couple of these things I remember her saying to me from the show. So, in honor of Sylvia Horta, things we learned watching Ugly Betty, there are 3 things. There's beauty in every struggle. So, Betty, or America Ferrera, came in, she was, you know, the foil to the main plot. Her character was written as a foil. So she walked into this high fashion, high vogue, you know, glamorous, fashion, studio. She worked in fashion, beauty, and editing and writing, and it was kind of like a Devil Wears Prada thing. And she walked in, and her outfits were always crazy. She had braces, and she had glasses, and they lit her up for this show. Because America Ferrera is beautiful, and they kind of, you know, dressed her down. I bet they had to really work to make her dorky and quirky. So, whenever Betty's first introduced on the show, she's hated. Her name is Ugly Betty. It's written like that for a reason. And she's hated because of her personality. You know, she has that kind of spunky, you know, she kind of, you know, those kids who everyone hates them because they're so happy, and half the people are wondering why they're so happy and how they can be happy, and the other people are wondering, you know, how they can take them down. And that was Betty. You know, she had that kind of, didn't let anything get to her, naive quality, although she knew everyone hated her in the show. And so we learned from her, even though she was what society deemed ugly, she adapted and overcame, winning the hearts of everyone in the end, because she consistently, as the brand was failing in the show, she consistently, as the magazine just kept flopping, she consistently adapted, overcame, and eventually saved the company and won the hearts of everyone. Number 2, evil can still be good. So Wilhelmina Slater, the main villain of the show, it was written as kind of like a comedy, taught us that there are 2 sides to every story, or in this case, every villain. So Wilhelmina Slater, played by Vanessa Williams, was written to be, you know, the villain, and she wanted to come in and take over the magazine and become top editor, and that was her goal, as a kind of a comedic stop at nothing to like stab you in the back character. But throughout the series, we learned about, you know, her family issues and the problems that she had in her personal life, and her continuously failing. And we kind of saw, you know, the other side, and we saw the softer side of Wilhelmina, and every evil, every perceived evil can still be good. There are 2 sides to every person. It's not always what meets the eye with people. Every evil can be good. 3, and this is something my mom used to say to me all the time, and I never really understood it. She would say, "Wherever you go, there you are, ha ha ha." She would chuckle, and I thought, is it some kind of ancient Chinese proverb? Like, I didn't really understand it. But basically, in the series finale, Betty goes off, finds her dream job in London, but ends up running into people from her past. Suarez runs into Meade. They were also two characters that were like an on again, off again love triangle thing. And it basically, you can travel miles. You can try and run away, but you'll never run away from your past. Wherever you go, there you are, and there is everything you've been through. And the biggest lesson taken from the show, although Betty was different from the outside, she shone so brightly, and her heart shone so brightly from the outside, or from the inside out, that she changed the people around her, and she changed the hearts of those around her, and made the world a better place. And so, you can't put beauty, beauty is something that you can't put on. Like, you can't fake beauty. It really actually does come from the inside. And you can be the prettiest person in the world, but if you are mean and hateful, it doesn't matter, you know? You can't put beauty on, despite popular opinion. Alright, when we come back, we'll be talking, finally, Awkwafina and the Golden Globes, news, style, walking the red carpet, and the star that actually wore her own wedding dress onto the red carpet. We'll get into all that and more on the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. We'll be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
I'm the worst at watching shows all the way through, especially with something like the Golden Globes. I don't ever watch it all the way through. And I was bad about falling off of The Bachelor too. I didn't watch the whole episode. It takes a lot to captivate my attention, and whenever your show goes on for 3 hours, I gotta eat. Sisters gotta eat. Sisters gotta sleep. I got things to do. I cannot be sitting around for 3 hours. But I sat around long enough to catch some pretty great moments. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Awkwafina, the brilliant Awkwafina, who recently just starred in The Farewell and actually won a Golden Globe for it. So Awkwafina is her stage name. Her real name is Nora Lum. She was in Crazy Rich Asians. That's the first thing I saw her in. And she was hilarious. And whenever I saw her in The Farewell, I was kind of like, this she's different. I remember her being pretty funny in Crazy Rich Asians. She was the foil character. She was the comedic relief. And she was good at it. She has comedy down. She was kind of, the ragtag B-plot comedy character with totally different hair. That's why I didn't recognize her at first. But she has comedy down. But I'm telling you, she has drama down too. So The Farewell is essentially a light comedy. It's like a dramedy, basically. It has some pretty touching themes, but it with Awkwafina in it, it still has its comedic parts. So basically, it's a girl, and she is of Asian heritage. She doesn't quite follow as strictly the customs of her family, but whenever she finds out her grandmother has just been diagnosed with cancer, her family calls her, they get back together, they go fly to be with her, but the family tells her, hey, don't tell her that she has cancer. So unbeknownst to the grandma, who's just living it up, excited that her family's coming to visit her, they actually are there because she has cancer and she's dying. And it's touching in the way that that commercial about, there was a commercial a while ago. It was an Asian family, and saying how whenever they sit down at the table, this was the theme of it, when they sit down at the table, using chopsticks is a part of the Asian culture and Asian heritage, and you need to slow down and be precise when you use chopsticks, and that was the theme of this short video. They're the teens of the older generation. It spanned several years. They kind of lost the meaning of chopsticks, and the adults would kind of, rag on them, and finally at the end, it's like, this is our culture. This is the time we have together. We're keeping this part of ourselves. And so it's sort of similar to that in a way. It has that same kind of sentiment to it. The big round table, coming home kind of feel, homecoming, it's sweet because it's basically takes us on Awkwafina's character's journey of being there, coming home after so long, after being out of touch with her family, and really getting close to her extended family again, only to have to say goodbye. And the character struggles with not telling her grandmother, and she fights with her family over, don't you think she deserves to know? And the doctor and the family's like, this is the better way. This is a good way. Don't distract her from, seeing us again for the last time. And Awkwafina, who was usually a comedic character, she really brings it for this movie. And she ended up winning a Golden Globe, which was fantastic. Totally deserved. She came out of the woodwork, out of nowhere, yet last year with Crazy Rich Asians, and she's got a Golden Globe now. And so she had a pretty touching speech about her heritage and where she came from and how important the movie was to her. So I'm an Awkwafina fan. I'm really happy for her. And I really want to sit down and watch The Farewell. I haven't gotten to sit down and see that one, but that's definitely on my list. So moving on, Pretty Little Liars star Troyanne Belisario. The Golden Globes walk down the red carpet and, dress reveal and tux reveal. Let's be real, it's a dress reveal. The women live for it. I mean, the men too. Award shows lately have gotten, both genders have started playing along. But seeing everyone's outfits, it's always super fun. Troyanne Belisario, I feel this girl because she was on Pretty Little Liars. She wore half of her wedding dress to the Golden Globes. So she repurposed it, and she wore it to one of the biggest award ceremonies in the country, in the world. And I think, what a great idea. And I think I feel this so much because I don't understand the hubbub with wedding dresses and weddings in general. I understand, it's one moment in your life, but I don't understand spending $100,000. Well, that's a little bit out of the park. I don't understand spending $10,000 to $15,000. Sometimes people spend upwards to $20,000 on a wedding dress, and I just don't get it. You're going to wear it once, and then it's going to sit in your closet. And I thought, what a great idea. If you're going to buy it, I'm personally thinking of renting mine because I don't wear constricting clothes. I like to be comfortable. Wedding dresses and tight white lace just ain't my thing right now. And I'm thinking, it's going to sit in my closet. I don't want to force it on my daughter. If I even have a daughter, I might have a son, I'm not going to force her to wear my dress. And so it's just going to gather dust. So why not rent it? Why not? Or at least if you buy your wedding dress, a dress you pay thousands for, make it into something, Make it into a blanket, make it into a pillow, make it into something, so it doesn't just sit there. So I thought, what a great idea. Her wedding, and then the Golden Globes. Which one is bigger? I don't know. That's up to her. But I'm definitely on that reduce, reuse, recycle train. There's no reason to buy new, unless it's undergarments, and a couple of other things. But I personally thrift all of my clothes because it's better for the environment and it's better for your wallet. Like, why would you buy something 5 times the price when someone has worn it once, maybe twice, maybe a couple of times? You just gotta be thrifty with your thrifting. You have to be smart. There's no reason to buy new, guys. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I feel like I'm a little chatterbox today, just chattling and rambling. Chattling, that's not a word. Chattering and rambling. So, on the next segment, when we come back, we're going to talk about another death that recently happened, Elizabeth Wurtzel. So, Elizabeth Wurtzel wrote Prozac Nation, which was a book about a girl's battle with depression. And it was the first book that really cracked open mental illness and gave us a look at the depths of the mind. She wrote it in the early 90s, and it was kind of like a shockwave around the world. So we'll talk about that, and then I'll give you my personalized list of books to check out if you like that. So stay right here on the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith.
An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Guys, so last segment we talked a little bit about Awkwafina and red carpet buzz, and we're going to talk a little bit about Elizabeth Wurtzel. As a disclaimer, this story does include the mentioning of suicide, so if you are sensitive to that in any way, go ahead and fast forward about 10 minutes. So, Elizabeth Wurtzel was the author of Prozac Nation. She released the book in 1991, and it was shortly adapted into a film in 2001, so just a couple of years after. And she passed this morning of breast cancer. Again, another, childhood hero. So, Wurtzel wrote Prozac Nation, and it was kind of the first, book giving light, giving the spotlight to mental illness and depression, which is something that not a lot of people talked about in the 90s. It was, do a bump and keep moving. But pharmaceutical drugs and psychiatric facilities weren't exactly among, dinner conversation. And this book kind of, cracked that phenomenon wide open. So the book is basically a biography. Elizabeth writes from her perspective of Lizzie, that's the main character, and she is 19. She has just been accepted into Harvard, and due to, family trauma, divorce, what happens, and she begins to experience depressive episodes, which have gradually been ramping up throughout her childhood, and her mother doesn't exactly know what to do. She has an absentee father, and when she gets into college, it kind of all comes crashing down. She sleeps with somebody very casually and kind of starts throwing things that she once thought was important, her morals, her values, she kind of lets loose a little bit. She was privileged as a child. She was gifted. She wrote a children's book. She was seen as perfect. She got straight A's. And now she starts to act out once she gets to college. And she goes into a really depressive state and ends up in the college facilities, the medical facilities. And just from there, she declines. She ends up leaving school to try and, have a change of pace. As most depressed people do, they think, a new location will help, but it doesn't really. She keeps slipping, and finally, she is diagnosed with depression. It wasn't, it wasn't just a 3 out of 4 thing as it is today. People had trouble, her therapist had trouble diagnosing her with her mood swings. And the point of the story is that through the therapy and pharmaceutical development, Prozac is eventually developed, and Prozac completely changes her life. So this isn't a story about, people, this isn't an anti-pharmaceutical story. This is, a story of how Prozac helped set someone's brain chemistry balance back and save their lives, She finally committed or tried to commit suicide, and while waiting for Prozac to take effect, and once it took effect, she was finally able to, gain her life back and find joy in her life that she hadn't had in a long time. And it really just, it is almost a love letter to pharmaceutical development. And, Big Pharma doesn't have the best reputation in America, but the development of Prozac had a huge impact on society. And there are, there's always that opinion that Big Pharma makes millions off of people, but there is also the fact that without pharmaceuticals, people with brains that are a little bit rusty, some people have polymorphisms, some people have, slowed uptake inhibitors, some people lack serotonin. Without pharmaceuticals to help that, it's like fighting a losing battle. And so it really, it was given mixed reviews. It was Prozac's introduction into mainstream society. I've read the book, and the movie is great too. Christina Ricci stars in the movie. It is jarring. It's a jarring movie. It's not easy to watch. Neither are the other 2 books/movies I'm going to talk about. If you are a fan of Prozac Nation, or you want to read more books about, mental illness and biography style, I recommend Get Me Out of Here by Rachel Ryland. It's a story of a girl who is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and major depressive disorder, manic disorder, and it's told from her point of view, going to seek therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, which is another cutting-edge therapy for personality disorders. And that's not a movie, but of course, honorable mention is Girl Interrupted, which I feel it is a book. None of these are easy to read or watch. Girl Interrupted is also a film, like Prozac Nation. I think Girl Interrupted is more, more entertainment value than realism. It's Angelina Jolie and Brittany Murphy while Brittany Murphy was still alive. God rest her soul. But those are a couple of, and Brene Brown is great on the kind of lighter side, but biographies, realism, people have been through it. I definitely recommend Get Me Out of Here by Rachel Ryland and Girl Interrupted by Susanna Kaysen. When we come back on a lighter note, for my final segment, I'm going to be telling you who was born on this day. Without Googling, can you think of anybody? Hint, they're all Hollywood movie stars. We'll be right back with the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Social Media Podcast. I'm your hostess with the mostest, and we're here to finish out near the end of our segment. So I'm going to tell you who was born on this day, January 7th. First guy, he's a man. You might know him from Raising Arizona, depending on how old you are. You might know him from Matchstick Man. You might know him from National Treasure. And you might know him from Ghost Rider. It's everybody's favorite meme, Nicolas Cage. So, personally, he creeps me out. So, people in my theater, corps, group, class, troupe, whatever, cult, I don't know, people in my theater group, in the theater club, drama club, I don't know, it was more than a club. It was a way of life. No, people in that group, they used to print out Nicolas Cage heads. Like, it sounds really goofy, but that one picture of him, like, when his head is back and he, like, has his eyes really wide. If you're familiar with meme culture, you know which one I'm talking about. It's the Nick Cage meme. And back whenever that was super popular, they would print out his head and stick it around places for people to find, just like randomly. I'm sure, every school had that group of weirdos, and I was one of them. All right, second up, we have Jeremy Renner, also known as that dude that you know his face, but you can never quite remember his name. He was in Avengers, he was in The Hurt Locker, he was in The Bourne Legacy, and he was in my personal favorite. If you haven't seen this movie, please do yourself a favor and go look it up. It's called Tag, and it was made in 2018. It's awesome. It has Hannibal Buress in it, as well as Jeremy Renner, as well as, I can't place his name, but the guy from New Girl, Nick from New Girl, and like so many other great actors. And I had no idea this movie was even a thing. I was randomly browsing Amazon Prime the other day. This is not Amazon sponsored, and actually it was like a year ago, and I watched this movie in its entirety, and it kept my attention. It's so good. It's a comedy about 5 friends who come back. They play basically this huge game of tag throughout their whole lives. So whenever somebody gets married, they show up at the wedding and tag them. Whenever in random events, they play tag throughout life, and it's funny. It's kind of dry, it's kind of out there, but it's a really good movie. John Hamm is in it too. Don't like him, but there's some characters in there. So next is a lady, Lauren Cohen. You might remember her from The Walking Dead, Maggie. I only watched up until Glenn died, so I don't know what happens after that. Glenn, once he died, that did it for me. Sorry for those of you who didn't even make it that far. Yeah, Glenn's dead. So, Lauren Cohen was also in The Boy, the movie about the doll that supposedly the gimmick was that it came to life, but it didn't really come to life. It was some dude living in the wall, and it was creepy as hell. It was cheesy the whole way through, then it got weird, so yeah, it was a moment. Next up, we have the one, the only, the TV host, Supreme Katie Couric, writer and legend. And for honorable mentions, we have Haley Bennett of The Magnificent Seven and Daniel Caruso of First Blood. I probably should have put him way higher on the list, but I like Lauren Cohen, so I put her in there instead. So that's about all I got for you guys today. Remember to like, subscribe, leave us a review on Facebook, send us what you want us to review, what you don't want to hear about. Send us news stories. We want to hear from you guys, we want to interact with you guys, and we want your feedback. Thanks for tuning in to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. Have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.